Rules aren't meant to be broken. They're meant to be rewritten altogether. If you're ready to play by your own rules, if you are a rebel with a cause, I think you'll love it here. Bring a friend, sit back, and enjoy another episode. Or don't. Remember, you write the rules here. Hello, my love. You are officially tuned in to another episode of Rima's Rules. And if that doesn't sound familiar, it is because we have changed the name of this channel. And I thought, what better way to introduce this evolution than through me talking about 5 ways that I have rewritten my rules, specifically around relationships and boundaries. But before I get to those 5, I want to talk you through why I'm even on this tip of Rima's Rules. First of all, it just sounds really cute, but even behind the alliteration, with me, there's always a deeper meaning. And really, when I reflected on who I am and who I've become, I realized that I have just really learned to write my own rules. I am someone who is constantly challenging what others expect of me or what I'm told I'm supposed to believe and rewriting those rules for myself. And I really spent all of my 20s, like really all of my 20s, playing by other people's rules or trying to rebel against those rules, but still playing within them because I wanted people's approval so badly. And it wasn't until I turned 30 that I realized, like, I don't actually have to play by those rules. And as a matter of fact, I'm not a victim to those rules. I'm literally choosing to play by them in a lot of cases because I want people's approval of me. Because if I were to just scrap them and not care about certain things, then I could not simultaneously make them like me and do what I want. And something just kind of switched, like a flip in me when I turned 30, where I was just like, I actually just care more about doing what I want. Like, it would be great if people could like me and understand me and get my decision making and my choices, but that's just a nice to have. What I really need is to feel like I'm living a life that is very authentic and very aligned. And funny story is that my best friend, who's like a few months older than me, she literally was like, Rima, when you turn 30, like something magically happens and you just stop giving a F. And I thought it was just funny. I'm like, really? But like when you turn 30, like literally the day of your birthday, you just stop caring. She's like, yeah. It sounds crazy, but this magical switch just turns off in your head where you just don't care so much about how other people see you. And even though I was 29 years old at the time and some change, I felt so much relief just imagining what it would feel like to possibly care a little bit less than I had cared. And I can honestly tell you that my 30s, I'm now 31, I'm about to be 32. My 30s have really been me just realizing that I didn't have to care so much and that I was choosing to care so much because I wanted other people's approval more than I wanted to live my own life. So that is just really a gut check for you, my love, regardless where you are or how old you are or whatever. I want you to realize that you don't have to play by other people's rules. You don't even have to play by the rules I'm about to line up for you because these are rules I've rewritten. My hope is that it encourages you to rewrite your rules. The whole point is that in any situation, if you are following these made up rules by somebody else, it's because you care about how you're perceived by those people. And you just have to be okay with that. That's completely okay. But you are not a victim in those situations. And it's very important for you to understand that. So without further ado, here are 5 of my rewritten rules. Number 1, I reserve the right at any moment in time to become unrecognizable AF. I don't know about you, but I know that there's nobody in my life who has a signed contract from me that states that I will not be changing. Like, there is nobody in my life who I've promised I'm this final product that they're entitled to, and they need to constantly hold me accountable to who I said I was yesterday. I absolutely don't believe in that, and I have never believed in that. In fact, the only thing about me that has ever been constant, and this is true about all of us, but especially someone like me, the only constant is how much I change. I don't even know if I'm going to agree with everything that I'm saying in this video in a month. That's how rapidly I change. And it's because I'm constantly absorbing and learning, and I'm so empathetic that I'm like, having conversations with people out in the world, and I'm letting that mold my opinion because I don't want to be a fixed-minded person. I want to be somebody who is constantly growing and evolving. And I embrace moments in life where I'm humbled because that shows me that I was wrong. And life would just be so boring if I was always right and if I knew it all. I realized that there were a lot of people, directly or indirectly, in my life who were almost feeling entitled to past versions of me and were almost like angry at the fact that I had changed, whether it's my opinion or the way I do things or the career path that I wanted to be on. I felt like certain people demanded a past and not updated version of me and didn't realize that I'm constantly updating myself. I'm constantly upgrading myself and my thoughts and my beliefs. And just because you and I used to be friends during a time when I believed one thing does not mean you're entitled to me believing that a year later. I also want to make clear that with this rule, it's also a rule you need to check yourself on, because sometimes subconsciously, you'll know that you've changed and evolved, but you'll get into these rooms or conversations with people who have only had access to this past, not updated version of you, and you'll start showing up as that past version of you because you'll feel like you owe that to them. I want you to understand that, like, you're not this Google Doc that you need to share with other people. I don't know why that's always the metaphor that comes to my mind. I used to be an English teacher. I also am constantly working in Google Docs for work. So it's like, you don't need to share your Google Doc with other people. You can restrict access. You could be view only. And so that as you're making these updates and changes, they can, observe it and view it and appreciate it, or they don't have to. But they're not in there leaving comments and leaving feedback and letting you know how they feel about the way that you're updating your thoughts and your beliefs and your personality. That is yours, and only you, my love, only you have a say in who you get to become. Even in the most intimate relationships, yes. Even with immediate family, even with your partners, you are an individual who is becoming, who is always becoming. And it is your prerogative who you want to share that with and who you don't want to share that with. But it is never anyone else's right to tell you how you can and cannot change. Put simply, nobody owns the rights to you but you. Rule number 2 is a direct build from rule number 1. And it's that your decisions do not need to make sense to anybody but you. I really hope that your decisions and choices really make sense to you. But outside of that, it's just a nice to have. And do not get me wrong, my love. I'm a Libra and I do this for a living. I explain myself for a living. I love to be understood. I love when people get why I did something. You know what I love more than anything? When my husband just gets why I did something without me even having to explain it. Nothing is sexier, nothing makes me feel more seen and just appreciated than somebody being able to read my mind, as idealistic as that is. I really do love to communicate, and I really do love to help people understand why I do things the way that I do them. But that's not an entitlement. I don't need to explain to people why I do things. I don't need to explain to people why I make certain decisions. And I certainly don't need their understanding as a prerequisite for me being happy. I'm going to put my head down there on that pillow over there and sleep peacefully, whether people understand the rationale behind why I decide things and why I don't. I'm a grown woman. I don't need to run my decisions by other people. This is one that I'm honestly just now learning. I have totally removed other people's opinions from my decisions a very long time ago, but there were a couple people in my very close immediate circle who I didn't really feel like I needed their permission necessarily for me to make certain decisions. But because I valued their judgment and their opinion so much, I felt like if they didn't understand why I did something or didn't agree with why I did something, it would really affect me. I used to lose sleep over it because in my mind, it was just logical. I've selected these people as my people, which means that I think that they're smart, which means that I think they have great judgment, which means that I think they know me and understand me. And so if they don't get why I did something, or even worse, if they disagree with what I did, then that must mean something bad. It must mean that I'm not thinking through it the right way. And when I really, really sat back to look at it, it was kind of sad because it made me realize that I'm trusting other people more than I trust myself for what is best for me. It's one thing to trust other people more than yourself for what's best for them. That's fine. Nobody knows what's best for a person but that person. But for me to be trusting, people worth trusting, don't get me wrong, very worth trusting. But for me to be trusting them more than myself about a decision that will ultimately impact me the most really highlighted to me how much work needed to be done on my part when it came to self-trust. And I really think, as I'm saying this out loud, the core tenet of Rima's rules is empowering me to trust myself as the number one authority on my life. And hopefully by doing that, I really want that to be the message that you take home. You are the number one authority on your life. I don't care how old you are. I don't care where you're at in life. Maybe you're figuring out your college major and you're seeking out advice from mentors or advisors at school. Maybe you are a first-time mom and you're looking to women within your circle to help you with that. It is 100% okay to seek counsel and mentorship and advice. But at the end of the day, the person that's going to be impacted by that decision is you. And so the person who needs to be okay with that decision is you. And if you trust yourself to trust other people to help weigh in on that, that's completely fine. I'm not telling you don't seek out advice. That would not be wise. What I'm telling you is after you've synthesized their advice and taken it back between you and yourself, you need to feel free to make whatever decision makes sense to you, even if it goes against everything people in your trusted circle told you to do. That is the only way to build true self-confidence and true self-respect is when you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, I trust that you're going to do the thing that makes sense. And I don't need it to make sense for anybody but you. That is one of the best things that's come out of this whole process for me is really feeling like I'm good with myself and I'm not betraying myself because somebody else told me something that made me think I was wrong about something. When something makes sense to me, that is the only prerequisite I need for me to be happy with my decisions. And everything else is just extra. I didn't mean for these to build off of each other so well, but rule number 3 is that what feels right makes more sense than what makes sense. Okay, that's not really how I wrote it, but I liked saying it like that. What I wrote is what feels right matters more than what makes sense. Because if something seems to make sense but doesn't feel right, then that doesn't actually make sense. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like if it seems like it checks out, but when you think about it, it doesn't feel right in your spirit, then I would argue it doesn't actually make sense for you. And I have really put myself through a lot of agony in life trying to force something because it looked like it made sense on paper, but I knew it felt wrong. And then that just takes you back to like the self-trust issue because my spirit was trying to tell me something, but I didn't think that that was a good enough reason to swipe left on something or to swerve something. Because I'm like, well, I mean, on paper, it makes sense. So who cares what your spirit says? I valued logic so much more than intuition and feelings. So much so that I think I spent the majority of my 20s, all of my 20s actually, not really knowing what my intuition felt like. Because I had just shut it up so many times that I don't know if she just stopped talking to me or if I just didn't recognize her voice. But I really valued these made up rules, these made up, systems of logic or value systems that I got from out in the world or from people in my circle so much more than what actually felt right or wrong to me. So I think in trying to make things make so much sense, even though they didn't, I wanted some sense of certainty and predictability. I didn't think that like how it felt in my body was enough certainty and predictability. It actually wasn't until I lost my dad and went through grief that I truly learned how to listen to how I felt. And I won't even say that I fully learned how to listen to how I felt as much as I feel like I was cornered to where, let me think of a good analogy here because analogies come to me easily sometimes. When you, I'm going to tell on myself with this one. When I used to drive, I'm passenger princess out here, so I haven't driven in a minute, but when I lived back home, I used to drive all the time and I just never took my car to the mechanic. So I would just drive with things kind of mildly wrong with my car until it really I really needed the oil change or I really needed to go check on my tire or I really needed to fill my gas tank. I would wait until the very last second until things could have been really bad for me to actually fix the problem. And then in those situations, the problem became so much worse than what it would have been had I just fixed it when there was like a slight little sign that it needed to be fixed. I feel like you get the point without me telling on myself too much. But I used to drive my dad crazy, by the way. But anyway, that's kind of how I treated my intuition. There were people in my life that really just didn't make me feel good. But in my mind, it's like, but I don't have a good enough reason to distance myself. Me not feeling good around them isn't a good enough reason because that's just a feeling. Did they do something? No. Did they say something? Like, this is the kind of logic that I used to value over just, I don't like being around them and that's a good enough reason. But it wasn't until my dad passed away where it was like, okay, this isn't just like, you need an oil change in a few months. This is like, if you don't get an oil change right now, your car is going to break down. And so that's how it felt going through grief, where I'm like, if I don't deal with these feelings right now, then I don't know, I'm just going to go into a very dark, bad place. And so it almost kind of forced me to distance myself from anything and anybody that just did not feel good. That was the first time in my life where I really, really lived by this whole thing of feeling good is more important than it making sense. And because I just was going with it, I'm just like, I can't. Like, I'm already dealing with so much. I'm in such deep grief. I'm trying to hold myself together. So if this person doesn't make me feel good, I just don't want to hang out with them. And I just thought that this was a temporary 1 week, 2 week thing. And I didn't realize that, oh no, like you've been feeling like this for a while around these people. And I didn't really have time to make it make sense in that moment. Eventually it made so much sense, but I could have never gotten to that point if I didn't first just trust how I was feeling and trust that it was going to make sense eventually. I wish I could say that I took that lesson immediately and started applying it right after that phase. But I think it took me a lot of like trial and error of trying to go back to this like logic focused thinking and realizing like, oh no, there's a lot of merit to this whole like trust your vibes, trust your intuition argument. And now I'm really learning to practice that so I don't have to constantly get rerouted and learn the hard way. So instead of expecting something to immediately make sense, I trust that my feelings are giving me intel that I can't yet put into words, and that one day I'll be able to put it into words. And I feel so much more powerful giving myself that permission and that space to let my feeling about something be enough for me to take action. Rule number 4 is that how they see you is literally none of your business. I know you've heard this one before, but if you're anything like me, it didn't really make sense. It just sounded like one of those cliche things that people said, but I really need to break it down for you because when I actually understood what this meant, it changed my life and it liberated me from other people's perceptions of me, which again, I'm a Libra. I needed a lot of liberating because I cared way too much how people saw me. So let me put it to you like this. Let's just use the analogy of a mirror, okay? How people see you is always a reflection of how they actually see themselves. So when they're looking at you, they're reflecting back to them something about themselves. And I think we can both agree that someone having this intimate moment between themselves in the mirror is not your business to be witnessing that. And so while they might think that they're making a comment about your personality or your behavior, good or bad, they're really actually seeing something in you that is a reflection of something that they either don't like or like about themselves. And for that reason, it's none of your business. Like, it's literally a projection. If they're looking at you and they're so angry at how confident you are, or they think that you're vain or too into yourself, they're revealing to you an insecurity that they have, or a feeling of resentment that they have, that maybe they don't feel they have permission to be that confident. Maybe they don't feel they have permission to appreciate their own beauty in that way. And so they're kind of telling on themselves. There was like another quote that someone said recently that I think I'm going to mess up the quote, but it's like their judgments are just confessions or something like that. But that is so real. It's like when they're throwing these daggers at you, trying to say something bad about you, they're actually really just confessing something about themselves. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about this, they say it in like a shady, petty way of like, they're just, it's just a projection. I'm not saying it in that way. I'm actually saying it in an empathetic way. Like, it's literally none of your business. You need to truly pull yourself out of that dynamic because they have something that they're struggling through, and it is so much easier for them to project that onto you as the object of their own self-hatred or as the object of their own insecurity than for them to actually look in the mirror and work on that within themselves. 9 times out of 10, they're not self-aware to even see that the only reason you doing you makes them so mad is because of something very personal between them and themselves. And the reason I like to pull myself out of those situations, which I've had a few of them, thankfully not as much anymore, but in the past I've had a few of them where I'm like, oh, they're not mad at me. They don't realize they're mad at themselves, or they're mad at something else in their life that has literally nothing to do with me. And this is so awkward for me to witness them in this way because I kind of feel like I'm seeing them emotionally naked. It really does feel like I'm violating their privacy by allowing myself to be a subject of that projection. So every time that I can, I literally just unsubscribe. Like I will pull myself out because it's none of my business whether they ever figure it out either. Like I just pull myself out of that because I recognize that as long as I'm made available to be a subject of their projection, number one, I'll probably be making myself vulnerable to some sort of disrespect or trampling on my boundaries, which I'm just never cool with. Number two, it's like I'm also distracting them from dealing with whatever they need to deal with. And I don't want to be a distraction to that. But at the same time, the recovering empath in me also has to remind myself that whether they ever deal with it or not is completely their responsibility. And I'm going to unsubscribe to remind myself that this is their task and not my task. So it's literally none of your business, and it is truly always their business. The best thing that you can do for them and for yourself is to double down on seeing yourself in a positive light so that you can make sure you're not reflecting any BS onto other people in the same way, because we all do it. Like, I can literally name you ways in which my judgment of someone else was just misdirected insecurity of myself. And I can tell you firsthand that the amount of self-work that I've done is positively correlated to the way that I see other people. Because I feel so happy with myself and so confident with myself, I'm able to see the beauty and the light in other people. And I actually have this tattoo here. Probably can't really see it, but in Arabic it says Ayunak al Halween. And anytime people ask me, like at the gym, like, what does that mean? I always just say beauty is in the eye of the beholder because I don't really feel like talking when I'm at the gym. But it's such an injustice to how beautiful this quote really is. And I want to take a second to explain it because it really encapsulates what I'm saying here. The quote literally translates from Arabic to English to "it is your eyes that are beautiful." And the way that this expression is used in our culture is if I were to come up to you and say, "Oh my God, your shirt is so gorgeous. It looks so nice on you." Or, "Wow, you're looking so amazing lately. Like you look great." We will humbly reject the compliment by saying it is actually your eyes that are seeing beauty, or it is your eyes that are beautiful, therefore allowing you to see the beauty in me. And I literally got goosebumps. I think it is seriously one of the most beautiful, underrated expressions because it truly, truly, truly reminds you that your perspective is what makes something like good or bad or beautiful or ugly or whatever. And it's so empowering because it helps you understand that like everything is truly neutral. There's nothing good or bad. Like everything is neutral. It is your eyes. I think there's another quote that's like, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Same thing. It's like, it's your perspective that allows you to look outside and see a sunset as beautiful. Nobody told you that a sunset was beautiful the day that you were born. Nobody told you that a certain hair texture or hair type or skin color or body type was beautiful or not. We're not talking about like BS beauty standards, but just when the moment that you were born, there was no like rule book of what is supposed to be beautiful. It's your perspective that looks at something and has this thought of, wow, that's so beautiful. And so in that same light, because you have such a good perspective and a good feeling about yourself and you're confident and you feel good about the world, you're able to see that in other people. You are not observing the ugliness and the negativity and all these judgy thoughts because that's just not the lens that you're looking at life through. Your eyes are literally primed to see beauty and goodness, because that is the energy that you are operating in. And I just want to let you know that anytime someone is seeing what they think is ugliness or something worth judging in you, truly that is so much more of a reflection. It is only a reflection of what they're dealing with and what they're going through than it is about what's true or not true about you. Bars. I hope that clarified that quote, because I feel like I didn't really get it at first. Like I was like, but now I get it. Rule number 5 is my favorite, and it's that you can be both, all of the above, and everything in between. You are a build your own pizza. Okay, you don't have to pick between this option and this option. You don't have to pay extra for the extra toppings. You can literally put everything on your pizza because it's your life. And you don't have to explain. I mean, if you're going to put pineapples or anchovies, you might have to explain. But outside of those 2 toppings, you don't have to explain why you mix 2 things together or why you pick this cheese instead of that cheese. Like, you just don't have to explain any of that because nobody's in your body but you. You don't have to be either an introvert or an extrovert. You don't have to be either a morning person or a night owl. You don't have to be either a feminine goddess or operating in your masculine energy. Like, you can be nuanced. Like, when did we become so boring? I just want to understand, like, when did we become so boring and basic to where we feel like we need to choose between these 2 absolutes? Like, who wrote that rule? Who said that someone is either an introvert or an extrovert at all times? Like, when I was in my 20s, I definitely leaned more extroverted. I do think at times labels can be fun and even helpful. Like, I'm all for a really good personality test. I'm an INFP, but I used to be an ENTJ. So that's the whole point. Like, I took it 8 years ago and I was an ENTJ. I'm talking about the 16 personalities, Myers-Briggs one. But now I'm an INFP, and that's a huge change. Like, I've changed so much. And it's fun to take these tests and to read about who else has this personality type and even like our horoscopes. Like, it's fun. But the second it stops being fun, you don't have to adhere to it. I love talking my butt off about how Libra I am. But the second there's something about being a Libra that I don't agree with or I don't identify with, I don't need to identify with that. Like, nobody else, let alone a stupid freaking quiz that was probably created with the most basic logic flow, like, no one's going to tell me who I am because nobody is experiencing who I am the way that I am. Nobody's in this head thinking the thoughts that I'm thinking. And I know it might sound so extra, like, Rima, calm down. We're just talking about being an introvert or an extrovert. But it really does start to weigh on you and your self-trust when you're accepting so much feedback from other people about who you are and who you're not. When you're allowing people to draw these boundaries around who you can become, it starts to become this self-fulfilling prophecy. And sure, it might start with, well, I'm really not a morning person. But like, it could also be something like, I'm not a runner. And then you might miss out on something that could have been the biggest blessing because you constantly telling yourself, well, I'm not a runner, I'm more of a this or whatever, prevented you from getting on the treadmill or going outside and joining a running club and meeting the people that you were destined to be friends with, or running a marathon that would change the way you thought about yourself and your body. It goes so much deeper than just a label. It's the belief that you allow to be put in your head. There is nothing I'm more protective about at this point in my life than the beliefs that I allow in here. And when I tell you, I will be a freaking lioness of a mother when it comes to the beliefs that I allow people to put in my child's brain. I'm even like that with my sister. I know this is, big sis advice. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to tell you what I tell Cece. Don't listen to me. And I mean that. And I'm like angry about it. Like, don't listen to me. I am not smarter than you. I am not more wise than you about what's right for you. And this is how I really want to conclude today's episode, and just reminding you that I don't know something about you better than what you know about yourself. And if it's helpful to listen to me and hear how I'm talking through things for myself, by all means, take it and run with it. And I love that for you. And I feel so honored and grateful that I'm able to be a soundboard in that way. But don't listen to me just because I'm saying something and it sounds good. Be protective about what you allow in your head. Yes, I want you to watch this channel and binge all my content, but especially my content because I know I could be persuasive, be freaking protective like nothing else about the beliefs that you allow in your head, because those beliefs, aka those rules that you think you need to play by, start to become your reality at a rapid speed, at a way more rapid speed than you and I even realize sometimes. The things that you put in your head, especially those unconscious ones, are what are literally unfolding in front of you. You would be remiss not to examine those with a fine-tooth comb and be very, very clear about what you want to believe about yourself, what you want to believe about your life, and what you don't want to believe about your life. And I really think that was a bar, because I wasn't expecting to take it all the way there, but this is really the message that I want this channel to spread. Like, if nothing else, I want you to feel like you can write your own rules. Like, if someone's rule doesn't apply to you and feels reductive, then you have the agency to scrap it and rewrite something that actually works for you. That is what I want you to take away from this conversation and from all of our conversations. And look, I'm not going to tell you to like this video or subscribe. I know you hear that enough, but what I will tell you is, if this was helpful, then bring a friend next time. And with that being said, I hope that this video left you way more powerful than it found you, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.